Hello, everybody. Greetings from Dayton, Ohio. I'm Amelia,
And I'm Tom.
and we're here to bring you a story, actually two stories, two parables from the Gospel of Mark, told by our teacher, Jesus.
Right.
And it just so happens, I spent the morning in the garden, pulling weeds mainly, but I did a little bit of planting, and both of these stories are about seeds and planting and all that good stuff that we really extra enjoy in the spring. Yep. Except I had to take a 2-hour nap after to recover where I could do this video. Anyway,
Right.
Tom will tell us the story.
All right. Yep. Yeah, I've been waiting all afternoon here for this. So it's okay. We're in good shape. And these are great stories. So Jesus said and taught, the kingdom of God is as if someone would scatter seed on the ground and would sleep and rise night and day, and the seed would sprout and grow. He doesn't know how. The earth produces automatically of itself. First the stalk, then the head, then the grain in the head. But when the grain is ripe, at once, he goes in with the sickle, for the harvest has come. So, with what shall we compare the kingdom of God? And what parable shall we use for it? Well, the kingdom of God is like a grain of mustard seed, which, when it is sown on the ground, is the smallest of all the seeds on the earth. But when it grows up, it increases, becomes the greatest of all the shrubs, so that the birds of the air are able to come and make nests in its shade. Well, with many such parables, he taught them. Indeed, as they were able to hear it, he didn't teach them without a parable, but privately to his disciples, he explained everything.
Thank you, Tom. Yeah, sometimes I wish Jesus were here to explain everything to us, aren't we, his disciples? Because sometimes they're pretty hard to understand.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, Tom, you and I are both city folk. We have grandparents who were farmers, but
Yeah.
we live in the city, and probably most of
I
the
grew
people,
up on an old farm.
yeah,
On an old tobacco farm.
yeah, you did. So you had some experience of planting, maybe.
Yep.
But in most of my experience planting, you put the seeds in the ground. But in both of the cases with this, it seems like it says the seeds were on the ground. That's a little thing, but I wonder, is that just a translation glitch, or did you tell it wrong? or is that really what it is? And if so, why?
Well, it reflects first the Greek, and the Greek in turn reflects the way that farming, the way they did seeds. What they would do was they would throw the seed on the ground, and then they'd plow it. So that's how the seed would get, in the earth. This parable is every farmer's dream, that they could just throw out the seed, it would grow by itself, it would produce this great harvest. He could just sleep and let it grow. He didn't have to do anything. He didn't have to plow it. He didn't have to, this is the dream of every peasant farmer in Jesus' context, in the villages where he taught. So it is supremely an attractive and joyful parable for farmers.
Well, so would
And,
most
so
of
it
Jesus,
reflects that
yeah, the
farming
people,
practice.
sorry, I thought you were done. Most of the people listening to Jesus would have been peasants, farmers.
Yeah, yeah. He taught in Galilee. Most people were peasant farmers. There were also fishermen.
Oh, yeah.
He chose fishermen for his disciples, but the rest were probably peasants.
And so what would this
And-
parable have meant to them? As
Oh, it was a a parable of good news about the kingdom of God, that the kingdom of God was, an ultimately great thing for a farmer. We fulfilled all the dreams and hopes that a farmer would have. They could have a great harvest and not have to do any work. So,
so what were their issues? How would this parable have addressed their issues?
well, the primary problem that happened that people in peasant societies in the first century dealt with all the time was famine and the possibility of hunger. So it regularly happened that there'd be a bad harvest, that things would get burned out, that there wouldn't be enough rain. And so there would be a famine all over the Roman Empire. And so, but especially in Palestine, it was subject to all the vagaries of weather in Galilee. And so, this addresses the primary anxiety that farmers faced, which was a bad harvest and the family starving. So it's really good news. It's a parable that invites, in an unambiguous way, joy. Likewise, the parable of the mustard seed. A little seed that throw out on the ground, it grows up and becomes this great big shrub. And the great the happy thing about it is the birds of the air come and make nests in its shade. So we regularly have on our porch, birds singing. It is just the most joyful thing. So these are parables of unambiguous good news about the kingdom of God.
Okay, so well, yeah, right. Both of them begin with Jesus saying the kingdom of God was like. Well, actually, the second one, the mustard seed one, he says, what shall we compare the kingdom of God? So they're kind of like extended metaphors.
Yeah.
And you've pretty much told us what the good news is, but do you have anything else to say about that?
Well, I found something in the Greek that's really neat.
Okay.
It doesn't get translated, which is that the seed is grows up and it produces grain. He doesn't know how. And the Greek word that follows that is automate, from which we get automatically, automatic. So automatically, the earth produces of itself. And that doesn't get translated. I'm surprised at that. It's automatic harvest. So that makes it even more of a dream job for peasant farmers.
Yeah. The mustard seed parable is close to my heart because the first time I really learned it and told it was in West Africa, in this small country, the Gambia. Remember when we went there?
Yeah, well, I didn't know that was the first time you.
Yeah, and I told it, we were in a Catholic retreat center. And so I told that and kind of taught that to the whole group gathered there. So that's a wonderful memory and association that I have with that particular parable. So that's one of the things that happens, especially if you learn these stories by heart. and then tell them to a group, you'll not only draw from the story itself, but you'll have memories of the people to whom you told it. And sometimes it may be in a very distinctive place, as in the case for me. So anything?
Yeah, well, I think that's what this final comment that Mark makes. Jesus didn't teach them without a parable. Is that parables are playful, and that he really enjoyed the play of teaching in these parables, that as people were able to receive it, to hear the word and make sense of the parables. So it was an invitation to ponder the mysteries of the kingdom of God through these these great analogies that Jesus would make.
Right. Do you think he was trying to say anything about issues of justice and peace for his peasant farmers, and that we might draw for our time today?
Well, the first thing that is addressed by these stories is hunger. And the life of a peasant growing food for the year. Food shortage and scarcity is a major problem in the world today. And the promise of the kingdom of God is that when people are responsive to God's will and God's purpose, that there would be food for everybody, that there would be this kind of joy that is reflected in these parables, and that everybody would have enough to eat. So this is a parable about the hope and the justice that is implicit in the proclamation of the kingdom of God, and how we would live into God's purposes for the world. And it would be that everybody would have enough to eat.
Well, anything else you want to say before we sign off for this week?
I'll say one other thing.
Okay.
These are parables of joy. This is unambiguous, celebrative, rejoicing in the mystery and wonder of the kingdom of God. And so my thought is for this week to celebrate and enjoy that good news about the future that is out there. That is a future of justice and peace.
It might also be an invitation to get outside and appreciate the incredible variety of plants that we have. Depending on where you're living, it will maybe different varieties of plants, but every place I've been, even in the desert, especially this time of year, there's just glorious plants doing their thing, regardless of what we humans are up to. The plants,
they grow.
That's right.
Right.
So that's a great blessing.
Yep.
All right, everybody have a good week.
Right.
Be joyful sometime this week.
All right.
And fruitful.
Yep.
Okay, bye-bye.
A harvest.
Yeah.